What is the difference between being punk and being a punk?
We are here to talk some punk rock, some music, comics,
Punk culture, DIY shit, anything we want to talk about.
That's what fascinates me. Give me everything. Absolutely everything.
I find that music and comics have always been intertwined.
Muckpout.
Chicks dig it. Don't worry.
Hey, we're back.
Hello.
Episode 11, I think. We're never sure on our count. There's not that
Doesn't
many.
matter.
We'll probably figure that out at some point. But
Another week, another podcast.
there you go. So I'm Eric. I got Ben with me, and today joining us we have Jason from Rebel Force. Jason, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I mean, yeah. My name's Jason, and I'm actually I just recently met Ben, and he asked me to be on the podcast, and that was actually the first time I saw that intro. That like whole countdown thing was like, it's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen?
A little intense.
It was a little intense. Yeah. No, I run a marketing agency, and also have been involved in punk rock scene and music stuff for like my entire life. Back in my stomping grounds at Sudbury, Ontario. It's about 4 hours north of Toronto.
Yeah, Sudbury's got kind of a legendary reputation with punk rock, but also just like local music in general. They have a really a good reputation for like a furious and energetic scene there. But it doesn't get a lot of like attention from media, like most cool small towns. It reminds me a lot of like Seattle back in the 90s, where it seemed like nothing was going on, and then everybody started going to Seattle going, holy shit, what have you guys been doing? So yeah, it's kind of a similar scene, I think.
Yeah, actually it's not the first time I've heard someone make that comparison, and it's just a lot of like undiscovered gems down up there. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's definitely a fixture for like any local like heavy bands that want to make the Ontario run. They'll definitely have to hit Sudbury.
Yeah. Well, if you're going west or east anywhere in Canada, like you have to drive through Sudbury, and then the odds are you'll end up playing this legendary venue called the Townhouse, and that's like kind of like I would compare it to like the Horseshoe here in Toronto. It's like just one of those venues that it almost doesn't matter who's playing. You show up, it's gonna be packed. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, so it's one of those spots.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in the scene, or was the scene just kind of something that was always there?
Well, I mean, it was been there like far before I got into it, but I got into it when I was I guess about like 14 years old, and I don't know how I even heard about this. We went to this place. It was called Delky Dozy. So it was basically a park, and you know how you have those like little shacks in some of those parks, and
yeah,
there might have been like a capacity of like 100 people in that building, and there was fucking 400 kids jammed into this place, like all local bands, just like punk rock bands. And as soon as I experienced that, I was like, okay, I need to be a part of this. I need to figure out like, how do I do this? And my first goal was like, as like that 14-year-old kid's like, it would be so cool just to play one show. And then eventually started meeting people. And then before you knew it, kind of started putting on all the shows back then. Like
very cool.
It's kind of that whole passing of the torch thing. Like the older generation passed it to me and then one of my good buddies, Kev, and we just started doing all the shows. And then eventually we passed that torch on to the next generation kind of thing. It's fun.
Very cool. Very cool. So who was it that passed the torch to you? Like, do you remember who was kind of like the big names on the scene at the time that were kind of organizing everything?
What was the time, by the way?
So this is like when I started doing this was like late 90s, early 2000s. Was like
that's such a fun time.
Like a 5-year period in that time. By the time I was putting on shows, I was in probably grade 10 until like pretty much college, and then kind of everyone started doing their own thing, and it was just kind of became a little different. But I remember there's this girl named Amy. I can't remember. Anyone from Sudbury that's my age right now is yelling at me like I don't remember this girl's name, but Amy was one of them, and there's a couple of people that put on the shows. It was but yeah, then it was me and my buddy Kevin Mason, and we just started doing all the fucking shows, like you know, like trying to think of all the bands, like we had like Propaganda, Face to Face, like all those like amazing punk rock bands, and so many local shows. Like just we used to always do this one every year. We call it the Fuck School Show. It was always like at the end of the school year, and I remember getting in a lot of trouble for putting posters everywhere. Like, I would make all these posters, like literally, like you know, cut out letters from magazines. Like, so I actually didn't have a computer or a printer or anything like that, or any sort of software to do this stuff. So we had to do it, or just draw it out and go to like Staples and like make a whole bunch of copies of them, and just we'd give them out to all the kids, and like we'd all like pass them around. And then there was a big thing at a bunch of the schools because we had all these Fuck School Show posters going around, and then
Right.
we're not a fan of that.
So, like, in terms of how to organize a show in a local scene like that, like, how do you coordinate, especially like if you're going to get a band like Propaganda? It's like, how do you get in touch? How do you like? Do they already know about the Sudbury scene, or do you have to kind of get them acquainted?
So, like I said, Sudbury's in this spot that it's like, it's not like in a bigger city like Toronto, or like people are probably actually going to have to fight to get that show. It's
Right.
like we just kind of had a network. We just ended up building up a network of like bands and contacts, and our contacts were given. So basically, like, let's just say theoretically, Propaganda tried to get a hold of this Amy girl who used to do the shows. She's like, "Oh, I don't do it anymore. Call like Jason or Kevin. They'll take care of you." And then,
Right.
then our numbers were given, and then that's how it all worked, right?
So it's just very organic.
I mean, like, yeah. Well, I mean, this was pre-social media.
Sure.
Like really, like internet was a thing, but not everyone had it. It wasn't the same as it is now. Like 100% dating myself right now, but yeah, it was it was just a different thing. And then like I would have to go to the venues, book the sound guy, book the security. Like there was a few of us that would like all kind of take that responsibility and working the doors. And then I would always end up playing these shows too. So it's like, yeah, it was just it was a lot of work, but it was so much fun. And what I find super funny about what I do now, so like I ended up getting into marketing and like owning a design agency, and it's I didn't realize it at the time. That's exactly what I was doing. Like I was doing design, I was doing marketing, I was doing all this stuff, but I wasn't looking at it. I was just like, I just want to put on shows and get people out, and that was it, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of have a similar background in a smaller scale. I would make flyers and I would make album covers for bands and stuff, and then I ended up working in marketing, and now I do video productions and marketing. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. Like to eventually find like your path through doing something that you love. Like so few people have that privilege.
Yeah, I know. I feel super blessed about it too. It's you know, when I wanted to go to school, I wanted to go actually take that. It was this Fanshawe. There was a program called like music industry arts, and I got into the program, but then got into a big fight with my parents because the music title was in there. They're like, no, you shouldn't do that, and they're like, you should take graphic design because it's computers. They just thought it was computers, right? So,
right. Parents don't know shit.
Like computers, like okay, cool, like and then just luckily I fell in love with it. So it's yeah, I was super blessed about that. Hold on a second.
Yeah, there's something interesting about punk rock in particular. There's a bit of like they like to keep it a secret, you know, and so I always find it fascinating when I meet people who like are involved in promotion and marketing, but have this sort of like punk rock ethos, because superficially, like if you didn't go to regular punk shows and get to know people, it would seem like it's sort of like this little secret group. Like there's even you know, a band that I really enjoy here in Toronto named Gaijin Smash, and they have a show at a skate park, but they don't advertise the skate park because they don't want people to find out where it is. So they have this ask a punk attitude towards it, where you have to find somebody that knows about it, and then they'll tell you where to go. And that also is its own kind of marketing strategy. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like guerrilla marketing, or if that's even a thing, or like how to
team.
approach
You had a lot of
promotion.
experience with street teams back then too, right?
Yeah. I mean, like that's how we did it back then. It was exactly like that. Like flyers on posts, giving people flyers here, hand out 10 of these, you know, like we'd give a few people like free entry into the shows just to like tell all their friends and do all that, and like, or like to like flyer up their schools, because like, you know, like only went to one of the schools, and then so we had to get all of them, and it was that's exactly what it was. It was all just word of mouth, and that's still 100% a valid way of doing marketing and getting that word out there, because like there's so many channels and there's so much noise out there that sometimes those old school ways still are the best.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think the pros and cons of the new way of marketing? Like, how do you think that affects the music scene in particular?
Oh, that's an interesting question, and like I thought about that a lot. Like recently, it's like it's exactly, there's pros and cons. It's like at one end you could break out, you could like, there are a lot less limiters. There's a lot less middlemen trying to stop you from releasing music and getting the word out. But on the flip side, everyone's doing that now. So now there's a lot more noise. So before there was like a filter, right? And so you had to get past those filters in order to get any sort of success. And now those filters aren't there. So now the filters are just breaking through the noise, doing something different, doing something that stands out somehow. And you know that could be done in many ways, but like it's tricky. It's tricky. It has its own challenges now. It's different challenges.
It seems like the crowd element, like having that community element, might be the decider for both, right? So like back in the day, it had to be street teams. You had to have friends just to get the job done. But now it's almost like if you're trying to do it yourself, if you're trying to market something yourself, technically you can, but you end up being just one of a million people screaming into the whirlwind, you know?
Yeah. And then the only way to really cut through that is just to build up like your social channels, so build up like, you know, like your Instagram, your TikTok. Like TikTok's perfect for music right now. Like it's actually incredible for it. And you know, the funny thing about doing what I do is I can give all this advice, but I don't always take my own advice. Like doing this for myself is a different thing than telling other people to do it, which I find is really funny. But
it's been my experience too.
But that being said, I think, you know, the number one thing, like any business, band, especially bands, that the mistakes that they make on their social is they start doing something like, come to my show, listen to my music, do this, like, you know, like always asking. It's kind of almost coming across like ads and that kind of thing. And that's, when you think about what you follow on social, like it's not that. You're going to follow things that you find interesting, that you find entertaining, that you're going to learn something from. So it's like, you know, always being like, oh, check out our music, or check out our show. Like you could, of course you have to do some of that stuff, but it's way cooler to like, you know, say follow a band and like, hey, we're just going to do our band practice here. Come with us. Come check it out or something like that. Or like a business just being like, you know what? Like, I'm going to give away some secrets or whatever. This is how you do things. And like, you give people value or entertain them or give them a reason to be there. And one band I found that did amazing like years ago. I don't know. They haven't really been doing quite as much because they're huge now, but you guys know Portugal the Man?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've been following them since like, oh my God, like years and years ago. Like I discovered them because I went to go see this band called Minus the Bear.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know Minus the Bear.
Yeah. Minus the Bear is like one of my favorite bands of all time. And they were opening, at least they were supposed to open for Minus the Bear, and their van broke down. So I didn't get to see them. So that would have been such a awesome show of both of them. But I was like, who's this? Every time I go see a show, I'll always do my research on who's playing. Be like, oh, I'm gonna check everything out. I checked out this band. I was like, holy fuck, this is amazing. And I started following all their stuff, and they would do like full-on acoustic sets. They'd do like remixes of their songs. They'll do things where like, you know, they're playing their songs like on acoustic in the middle of a street somewhere, doing like, they did all kinds of stuff. And it was like one of my favorite accounts to follow from any band I followed, because there's just so much content. It was all cool stuff. It wasn't just like just promo videos and shit like that. And then I think that's a lesson that's still true now, right? Like,
yeah, one of my favorite things to follow is bands that do like the Dirty Nil regularly do, and Crownlands. They both do breakdowns of their songs, like certain riffs or certain beats that they want to explore, and then they show you how they do it,
oh,
like
yeah,
how
that's amazing.
like where the influence came from, that kind of shit. I love that stuff.
Yeah,
man.
I love that stuff too. And it's another one I saw some interesting stuff was Every Time I Die had this whole thing about they're going over all their equipment, like their pedals, their amps, like all their shit. And it's like, you know, these are the tones, and then like, you know, like, yeah, don't turn your gain up too much. It's heavier with less gain. And it's like another fun thing to learn too. It's I remember when I was younger, just being like, you know, I want all the distortion, throw it all up to like, you know, 100% plus a distortion pedal on top of that. And it's like, you get that really tinny sound. And then whenever you do a clean part, it sounds all big. And then you click on the button, it goes clonk and goes, bzz, 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 bzz. It's like, it's like absolute trash.
Yeah. There's something to be like, I don't know, man, especially now at my age, I wish I could go back and just grab the younger me and just be like, take your time. It's worth taking your time. Just like slowly but surely work your knobs. You know, like when I started playing drums, it was like as fast as possible, as hard as possible. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to like master it. And now I realize like there's no mastering this shit. Like really what I'm doing is I'm figuring out what I want to sound like.
You see that with most bands too, when you pull out like a album that they did in like 92 and throw it on, and they pull out one they did like 5 years ago, and like you could just see like the recording. It's not even like they recorded on better stuff. It's just that they aren't doing some of that stuff that
they trust themselves more.
Well, I mean, when you're young, you have something to prove, right? So like you're like, oh, I'm gonna be the best band, I'm gonna be the best drummer, I'm gonna be the best guitar player, and it's like, you know what? You're probably not. Let's be real. You can still be amazing. You can still do super creative stuff, but like that idea that you're going to be like the best one, it's like you hold on to that until you realize that, okay, maybe that's not the best goal.
Yeah. I think I figured it out pretty early. I kind of like, I looked at all the greats, the people that I admired, and I was like, they got discovered before they hit 25. So I haven't got it by 25, it's like probably not me.
I mean, I don't think that's always true, though. I think
that's fair.
Like people that get discovered like that, it's like, you know, it's luck in the sense that it's like they were prepared, they were ready, they were good, and they happen to get discovered, being all those things.
Right.
There's a lot of people out there. I know people that are fucking ridiculous musicians, and then they haven't really made it big yet or whatever. It's just whatever happens, like things didn't line up, you know what I mean? Things didn't line up exactly right. And the beautiful thing about music is it could really happen at any time, especially now. It's not the same as it was years ago where it's like 25 and you're done. I don't feel like it's that way anymore.
I meant more as a virtuoso, you know what I mean? Being known as like one of the greatest in your instrument. But yeah, like making it music, definitely the doors have opened. But like you said, it's now you're competing with everyone. It's a totally different world. You know, I remember the shift from when there was like 5 or 6 bands that would show up to a practice on a Saturday and getting on a bus and seeing everyone has a guitar or a pair of drumsticks. And it was just a matter of a few years. And all of a sudden, everybody, like, it was like the floodgates open. Yeah. And everybody was wanted in on it. And I was wondering if you could speak to like how that shift, did that affect your scene in the same way that it did mine? Because it felt like showgoers kind of reduced because everybody was trying to be on stage rather than just be at the show. And I feel like that might have had a negative impact in a certain way. But then I also think more musicians is better, right? So it's hard to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I don't know if that's the reason why, but I definitely noticed like things were like when I was in high school, for example, and going to like my first few punk shows, if I put on a show, say just a local show, if like less than 400 people showed up to a show, I was like, oh, it's a disaster. What the hell? No one showed up. Now it's not like that anymore. It's And I think maybe like just so much more entertainment, people have access to so much more that maybe that's not the same. And it's different in a smaller town too. Like in a smaller city, like Sudbury's about like a little less than 200,000 people. So it's like not as much to do, right? So you got that.
Right.
But now it seems like maybe there's more options. I don't know what it is, but still do get those shows that are just massive and huge, and like it does still happen, but it's sure. Not as I feel like it's not as much, and you could be right. It could be because of that. I also kind of feel like with a lot of bands, like yeah, there's a lot more out there, but if we're being perfectly honest, there's a lot of not so great stuff out there too, right? There's stuff that people, they're trying to do their thing, but it's like the amount of bands that are excellent and that are actually have the work ethic and they're going out and they're touring and they're doing all the things, like those ones will always end up. I feel like most of them will always end up rising to the top because they're actually putting the work in, right?
Right.
I like to believe that anyway. I mean, that might be a naive thing to believe, but
I'm inclined to agree. I really feel like in any craft that you want to practice, what you really need to do is do it as often as possible. And so like, whether that's to 10 people or 1,000 people, it doesn't really make a difference as long as you're trying to put on your best show or like, play your instrument to the best of your ability. And then playing, like this was my experience, was like when I first started playing, I didn't really know how to be in a band. That was its own skill to learn. And then once I got good at being a drummer in a band, then I could focus on mastering my instrument. And then once I got good at that, then it was just like, I would play shows and people would be like, we should jam. And then it just kind of like expanded from there.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of like getting on stage and doing your thing and letting people know that like you're committed and they'll see it.
So how did you get started with that? Like what was what's your first show experience?
Oh man. Oh Jesus. First show I went to, or
your first show you ever played. The first one you ever played.
First show I ever played. Well, I had a bit of a false start. So I was supposed to play a show and it didn't happen. It's kind of a complicated story, but I was in a punk band my last year of high school. It's complicated. I don't want to get too deep into it, but my dad passed away when I was 18. Okay. And I ended up dropping out of high school because I had already graduated and I just didn't have the focus for school. I was worried about other shit. And so I ended up dropping out and ended up playing drums in a punk band. There was this guy that I knew. He played drums and he was getting real wild. Shout out to Jesse Andrews. He's fucking one of the real ones. And he had some shit to say. And we knew a friend who played guitar, and we got a buddy that was going to play bass. And he was like, and I was like, oh, so you're going to play drums? He's like, no, I want to sing. I want you to play drums. And I was like, I don't know how to play drums. He's like, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So we ended up practicing in this church, and because his dad was a minister, and that didn't last forever. Some stuff got broken, and we weren't allowed to do that anymore. And I believe there was definitely one youth group that started with Killing in the Name being blasted at full volume because I didn't take my CD out and I pressed pause. So I think we were disallowed from continuing there. But I was trying to learn Killing in the Name. So anyway, I practiced with these guys, and we had our band was named Endangered Feces. And
I love it. That's so punk rock.
Yeah. And so we started playing. We played in front of our friends and stuff, and they were like, yeah, I fucking love it. Yeah, this is fucking amazing. And so we set up, there was a local punk show in Newmarket that we were going to go to. And then my family decided to move, my mom and sister. And at the last minute, I kind of decided that I was going to go with them and quit the band. But I didn't expect to stick around. And then my mom was like, yeah, we're moving in a month. And I was like, in a month? I already quit the band. So I ended up going to the show and watching their new drummer struggle because he only had 2 weeks practice. But yeah, that was a little disappointing. And then I didn't touch drums again until I was 27.
Wow. Okay, cool. I mean, that's crazy. So why the big gap? Like you just kind of just doing your own thing, just figuring shit out.
I couldn't afford a kit. And I too many small places and too many roommates. So it just didn't happen. And then when I was 27, so I had this job where I was basically spending 4 hours a day traveling to and from work, like 2 hours there, 2 hours back. And so I would just sit on the bus and practice drums. I started getting into Lamb of God and Mastodon and all the real heavy shit, and learning double kick. And so I would practice drums on the bus for 2 hours there and back. And then one day we were playing Tool on the radio while we were working, and I was tapping away on the table, and one of the guys there was a guitarist, and he was like, "Hey man, you got pretty good rhythm. My drummer just quit. You want to audition? We already have a drum kit." And I was like,
"Oh, wow,
I sure, you know." And no, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. One of the cooks played guitar, and he had a drum kit as well. And he was like, "You want to jam sometime?" Because we were talking about the Mars Volta.
Oh, beautiful! One of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, same, and also with Midian. And so he happened to live down the street from me, also like 2 hour drive away. So I went over to his place and we jammed a few times, and I sat down behind a kit and he started playing, and I just like put my foot on the kick and I grabbed the sticks and I started playing, and I was like, I don't know how to describe it, but I felt like I was home.
Yeah. That's amazing, man.
Yeah. And like probably like 6 months later, I bought a drum kit, and this guitarist was like, "Hey, my band is, auditioning for a drummer." I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm in." So I went for the audition. I didn't think I'd get it. I thought I'd be like, play in front of these guys and then see what I need to work on, and then maybe I'll get the next audition. But they liked me, and rest is hit. I've been playing in bands ever since.
Oh, that's amazing, man.
Yeah. So it's been about 12 years. Yeah. First show was Velvet Underground.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And it was like, to play that. No, sorry. Oh my God, I forgot. That was my second show. The first show was the Elmo Combo. So the Elmo Combo is a legendary venue in Toronto. The Rolling Stones used to play it famously. Like all the great bands that came through played the Elmo back in the day. And this is before it changed management. It was kind of a struggling venue at the time, but there was a lot of showcases for local bands and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we got there, and I asked, like, what am I supposed to bring? Because I'd never played a show. And they were like, "Oh yeah, just bring your breakables." I was like, "Okay, so all the stuff that'll break. Cool. Sticks, kick pedal, cymbals." And I was like, "Anything else?" They're like, "Yeah, your seat." I was like, "Cool." So I brought my seat. And then I got there, and they're like, "Okay, set up." And I saw them taking the snare off the stage, and I was like, "Where's the snare? Like, where's our snare?" And they were like, "You got to bring your snare." And I was like, "I did not bring my snare." So we asked the next band, like the band was going to play after us, like, "Hey, can we borrow?" And the guy was like, "It's a custom kit. I'm sorry, man, you can't." And I was like, "Fair." So I turned to the lead singer after like 15 minutes of frantically trying to figure out a solution to this problem. Wasn't going to happen. So I went to the lead singer. I was like, "What do I do?" And Corey, he goes, "Show must go on." It's like, okay. So I got on stage and like spent the 45 seconds I had after I set up my kit going, okay, so a rim shot on here will be a snare, and then I can play the toms, and I just got to get through 20 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So I struggled through that set, and after the first song, like the bass player was like, not bad. I was like, okay, I'll just keep it together. Finish the set, and I was like, that was a complete nightmare. I so embarrassed. And I get off stage, unload all my shit, and then I go outside. I smoked at the time, so I went out for a cigarette. And as I'm walking out the door, there's this guy, I think he was a bartender at the Elmo. He's like leaning up against the door, and he goes, "Hey man, fucking love that shit. Real tribal sound. That was badass, man." And I was like,
because it's all toms.
Yeah. I was like, no one knows how to play this song. What do I care?
We don't know. No one knows the difference. And like being in a band, like you're always your worst critic, right? It's like, oh fuck,
yeah,
this part up, fuck this part. No one knows. Nobody knows unless it's like horribly out of tune or like the worst, like actual mistake where you stop. That's why like a lot of like professional musicians and stuff that they'll all tell you the same thing. Like just keep playing, just keep going, just own your mistake and just keep going.
People are there for the energy, like as long as you keep going and can keep that energy up.
And especially if it's like just like dirty punk rock music, it's loud, it's raw, and it's supposed to be like that, right?
Yep. And I also learned that like I have an advantage as a drummer where like the drummer kind of has the hardest job and the easiest job depending on how you look at it. So like if I fuck up like badly, everybody feels it. Crowd, my bandmates, everybody feels it. But if I fuck up a little bit and then I just keep going, everybody fills it in like I nailed it. You know what I mean? Like I just have to make sure that I get my drum fills, because if you fuck those up, it's like people notice that. But if you're just playing the beat and like your foot slides on the kick pedal or something, and as long as you carry on, everybody's going to fill it in to your benefit automatically.
You gotta hit
it doesn't work the same for other instruments though.
Yeah, you got to hit that 1 and the 3, and you're like, if you stay in that pocket, anything else, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get that. But it's like, it's like the drummer and the bass player, man, are so important. Like, because they create the entire groove, and the I find with guitar, it's if you really fuck up, you notice it 100%. But it's like, especially when you're playing like really driving guitars or with lots of effects and things, except for delay, you're gonna hear your mistake over and over and over and over again. Aside from that, it's like you kind of, the foundation of the song to me is gonna always be like the bass player and the drummer, right? The rhythm section.
Right.
That's gonna create your foundation, and actually allows like guitar to kind of be a little more free. That's the way I see it. So it's just kind of funny, people see it sort of slightly differently. But it's just, to me, it's like if the rhythm isn't on, if the drums aren't on, like a drummer will make or break any band.
Yeah, I would say like regardless of the style of music you're playing, your drummer has to be at least decent. Whereas the other instruments, you can be pretty bad and still kind of like make it through a battle of the bands. You know what I mean? And get like second place or something. But if your drummer sucks, everybody else has to be fucking amazing. Or it's not gonna work.
It almost doesn't even matter. You can have the most incredible guitar player in the world, the best singer ever, and I've seen bands like this, and the drummer just can't keep a beat. And you're just like, this sucks. It's like it's almost like a shame. It's like, oh, bad. But I've seen bands that have like drummers are just monsters, and the guitar players and everything else is just like, it's okay. But then that drummer carries that band, and it's like they're amazing live. Amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I think drums are especially a live experience. You know what I mean? Like you know, every recording, you can't really have a song without drums. Obviously, it's like absolutely essential. But if the drummer's good, the recordings are cool. But live is like a fucking performance, man. It's amazing to watch a really good drummer play live.
Yeah, I fully agree with that 100%.
So how'd you start? Like, what was your first instrument? I know you play multiple. So what was your first instrument, your first show, that kind of thing?
First instrument was guitar. So it was actually a friend of our family. He camped next to us at our old camp, and he found this old guitar at some yard sale, and he thought I would like it. He bought it for like $20 or some shit like that. And he gave it to me, and I was like maybe 10. And I played it for about 2 weeks and put it away for a couple of years, just forgot about it. And then I kind of got into like music stuff. And then when I was like maybe about 12, 13, I like was with a buddy of mine, like, oh, you have a guitar? And then we started playing it and messing around with it. And then he got a guitar, and we started like this god awful band. Just like, it was the worst thing ever.
Was that what you were called? The worst thing ever?
No. We were called Insipid. So pretty good title actually. Not matched the music very well. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And, like we didn't even have like a proper drummer. We were just we could take one of those old cassette things and like try to record our songs, and then eventually got a little bit better. And then I remember I was in grade. I feel like I was in grade 9 or grade 10. I don't remember. Actually, I think it was grade 9. And I was in this drafting class, and then a really good buddy of mine named Charlie Berger, who he actually lives in Toronto now too. He's in the local scene here. He's in 1,000 bands. I can't remember all the bands he's in, but anyway, he was just talking about like putting on this show, and we're like, oh, that's so cool. It's like, yeah, I'm starting a band. It was like me and like the drummer, my buddy Dave, we're like in this class, and he's like, oh, I'm playing, like, you guys want to play the show? And we're like, oh, we don't have a bass player. And then this guy just randomly like, I'm a bass player. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, do you want to play in our band? And like, do you think you'll be ready in 4 weeks to play a show? He's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So we're like, oh, let's have a practice tomorrow night. Okay, cool. So we're like, yeah, we're in. So
this sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
this is where this guy became one of my best friends. His name was Ray, and unfortunately he passed away like a few years ago. He got into
my condolences, man.
It's really sad story, but I'll keep it a happy note right now. We show up at his place, and he's like, oh yeah, dude, I got drums, I got everything that we need. We show up to his fucking place, and he's got drums, he's got a bass, and he's got an amp, and the fucking tags are still on this. He went home, and he's like, and he told me this later on. He's like, he went home, he's like, I made friends. They want to start a band. I need to buy equipment right now so I can make these friends. Because he came from like Espanola, which is about an hour outside of Sudbury, and he was new to the actual town of Sudbury, and he didn't know anybody yet. And anyway, so he
bought your friendship.
This dude never touched a bass guitar in his life. He didn't know how to play it. And I was like, okay, I'll show you like our songs, like 3 chords. Like, you just play.
That's amazing.
Chords. And then like, we started getting that all together, and then we like put together a decent set. It wasn't super tight. I mean, none of us were great yet, you know what I mean? But it was but then so like I said, this guy was from Espanola, and there's a backstory there. So I used to camp on Manitoulin Island, and I met these girls at Manitoulin Island, and they kind of became friends, and me and my friends would go there, we'd hang out with them or whatever. And anyway, so I guess there was another band playing from Espanola at this show, and I guess one of them was like one of their girlfriends or something like that. They did not like us. So they actually were like threatening to like, we're gonna beat you guys up while you guys are on stage. So we're sitting there like, oh my god, we're about to get into a fight. So I'm about to play the first show I ever played. I think I'm about to get into a fight at this freaking show. I mean, it didn't happen. It was just dumb kids being dumb kids, right?
Yeah.
And it was we ended up playing this show, and it was I was absolutely shitting bricks because I was like the guitar player and singer, and I'd never done that before in front of people, and this was like my dream to play this show, the set went pretty decently, actually. It went a lot better than I thought it was going to go. And then that band was called Guilty by Association. And it was like a political punk rock band. Well, as political as you can be when you're 14, you don't know anything. Basically, kind of copy propaganda. You know what I mean? Like,
fuck you, Dad.
Fuck the government. I don't really understand what the government does, but fuck it.
They do all the bad stuff. Things. Yeah, totally. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So maybe can you explain, because it's hard for me to explain it to people that haven't done it. Maybe you can do it justice. Can you explain why you feel terrified when you get on stage, but somehow it's the best feeling in the world?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to explain that. It's like, even now, like, I mean, I haven't played a show in about like, this is like a couple of years before the pandemic hit. The band I was in kind of broke up, and I started a new band, and then the pandemic hit, and then I moved. So like, I haven't had a proper band in a while. But even now when I play show, and I've done tours, I've done tons of shows, but every single one, I'm always like, got that pit in your stomach. It's like this adrenaline. It's like nervous energy. It's not really that you're scared. I don't know if this is resonates with you. It's like, you're not scared, but you've got this nervous energy. And then when it releases, when you're playing, I don't know if it's like this for you, but for me, when I'm playing, it'll all of a sudden be like, wait, what? We're playing our last song. Why are we playing the last song? It's like, yeah, we played all the songs. Like, it's almost like a blackout thing. I don't know what's happening when I'm up there. And it's just kind of, I'm trying to say it, what it's almost like doing like a drug or something. It's like you know what I mean? Like it's almost like that. It's almost like you're kind of fucked up on something. And
I've said for years that it's the best drug in the world.
Yeah, it 100% is. And like, man, like the last like about year or so, like since things have opened up and I've been getting to go to shows like that. I mean, that's how I met you. It was at one of your shows, and like I love it. I love being back in that environment. But every time I see people up there, I'm like, you know, there's definitely a part of me that's jealous. Like, oh, fuck these guys. I want to fucking play a show. Like,
yeah, totally. Do you have any plans in that direction? Because you have a project that you're working on right now. Are there shows in the future?
Well, I need to put together a band first. So that's where I'm at. Like
we've discussed this off podcast slightly as well.
Absolutely. But basically, since my last band broke up, which was called Hello Holiday, I joined a band with some of my really good friends called Sea Perry, and really, really fun stuff. It's really like it's the most pop band I've ever been a part of. It's like super pop, but it's just the guys in the band are some of my best friends on the planet, and like it's really fun. But the thing is me and the singer live here, so my singer Chris, he lives in Burlington, and the rest of the guys are in Sudbury. So it's kind of more like this long distance kind of working on stuff. Over the summer was really lucky. We got to I don't know how they hooked this up. It was our drummer that hooked it up. We started talking to Greg Nori. So you guys familiar with who Greg Nori is?
It rings a bell for sure.
You remember Treble Charger?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, Treble Charger. He also produced all Sum 41 stuff, and he is producing an album for us. So we got to go. He is in Sault Ste. Marie now. That's where he's originally from. And I guess he works for the university out there, and they built him a fucking studio, guys. This guy's a studio. It's like the mixing boards. He's got a Neve console. I don't know if you guys are like nerds for recording gear at all.
Not yet, but I'm growing into it.
Look into Neve consoles. These things are the best. Like this is the shit that like Nirvana Nevermind was mixed on a Neve console. You know what I mean? Like the Beatles was mixed on a Neve console. Like this is like legendary. And so he has this like $500,000 console, and that's just the console that he has, and plus everything else. It was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, he was still setting it up and testing things when we were there. He's like, yeah, we're gonna record it. And he got there, and then there was a bunch of problems, so we weren't able to actually lay anything down. But he was helping us like with some writing and some stuff, and there's a couple songs that they were working on that I had not been working on with them. And so I was kind of in there learning songs, about to record them. It was a crazy experience. We got to stay at Greg Nori's camp, his cottage. He just like let us stay there. He doesn't really know us. He's just like, here, just stay at my cottage, use my jet ski, use all my shit. He's the coolest dude ever, man.
This guy's kind of like music royalty in Ontario in particular, and in the Toronto scene, like the GTA scene, the Greater Toronto Area scene. Like he's done a lot for local bands in the area. He's helped put a lot of them on the map and give them opportunities in studios and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like,
he's just that type of dude, man. He's just that type of dude. And like, you know, I've heard really amazing things about him. Like a really good buddy of like mine, like I would say really, really good, but like back in Sudbury, there's this band called Far From Heroes. So one of my best friends in the entire world, his name's Jair. He was in this band. And one of my other really good friends, Jay, was in that band. And they ended up getting signed to Sony Records. And they were doing some shit, but then, you know, things happened. Deals fell through. Didn't end up going through the way they wanted. But Theo is a drummer, and he's been doing amazing things down here. He like does a lot of studio drumming. And anyway, he started a band called the Organ Thieves. It was with what's his name? One of the guys from Sum 41, like Brown Sound or whatever they call him. Like,
I know Brown. Yeah.
I don't know his actual name, but anyway, like Greg Nori was producing this band.
That is his name.
I feel like that's not his actual name.
No, probably not.
No. Yeah. So then he was telling me like, oh yeah, Greg's awesome. Like, because I was doing a little like when I was about to work with this guy, like, I don't know this guy. Like, what's his deal? And so I actually asked Theo. He's like, oh no, he's a good dude. Like okay, cool. Like,
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So when we first met, you told me kind of like a like a hidden history kind of story. When No Use for a Name came to
Oh, dude,
town.
yeah. So like,
I was wondering if you could tell that story.
Yeah. So got to play with this like No Use for a Name. So if you guys like, if anyone doesn't know, they're a legendary like punk rock band. Like they're on were they Epitaph or Fat Band? I think they're a Fat Band, Fat Records.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm not sure which one.
I mean,
I think you might be right about
things. So it's like,
yeah.
Anyway, they came through, and their guitar player, his name's Chris Shiflett, and anyone who knows anything about the Foo Fighters knows that that's the guitar player for Foo Fighters. And I got to talk to all the bands and stuff, like, cause it was just part of the perks of putting on all these shows, get to have conversations. And I remember him saying like, oh yeah, like I might be trying out for the Foo Fighters. He's like he was really nervous about it, and he's like wasn't sure what to do. And it's just like fuck. He's like, that's the most fucking incredible thing. I mean, that's fucking Dave Grohl, dude. Like, dude. Yeah. So it wasn't long after that tour. I think that was the last tour he ever did with that band, with No Use for a Name, and he went and joined the Foo Fighters after. And apparently, from what I understand, they just had this open call, and they just like thousands of guitar players showed up, and he's the one that got the gig. I mean, the dude played in legendary punk rock bands and was like, fucking, that dude rips, man. He's such a good guitar player.
Yeah.
I wonder if solo stuff too now.
Yeah, he's doing all his own stuff now. That's right. I haven't really what's going on. Have you guys listened to it?
I haven't.
Yeah, I have not listened to his stuff. I want to say that I might have checked it out at one point, and like something that I checked out sounded a little more country than I usually care for.
Okay.
But I also could be wrong about
that. Sorry, Chris. We think you're great.
Yeah.
If you're watching. If you're watching my old buddy Chris, man, my best friend.
Mad respect. There's just a lot of music out there. What are you gonna do?
Come on, we can talk about it.
That's always something that I wonder about. Like,
you
meet all these people sometimes, especially if you're putting on shows. Like you meet tons of people, and I wonder like how much they remember. Like one of the nicest band I've ever met, like by far, Monine. Those guys are the fucking sweetest dudes you'll ever meet in your life. Like, just amazing guys. Amazing guys.
Yeah, like, incredibly talented musicians too.
Oh my god, yeah.
So
like I remember the first time I saw them play in Sudbury. Their EP had just come out like before they put out their first full length. And hold on one second. Vader, my dog is whining. Come here.
No problem.
Come on, buddy. Sorry about that. Anyway, I just watching them play, I was just like, oh shit, I got to level up my game, because these guys are just like, they were doing shit that like I hadn't ever heard anything like that before. Like that, like
on that topic, best show you ever put on in terms of like the talent and the the order of bands and like crowd turnout, all that kind of stuff.
So, I don't know if this is like the biggest one, but the best one to me is we used to always do what was called the Small Man Tour. So back in the day, there's like actually Monine was on this record label called Small Man, and they also had this other band called Choke. I don't know if you guys have ever heard Choke.
I don't think I listened to Choke.
So Choke was this really crazy, super technical, mathy punk rock band. Like they were really fucking dope, really fucking cool band. And there's another band called Layaway Plan. It was always the three of them. They always went on tour, and we used to always do the Small Man Tour. And I remember this one show, we did this venue, the place was packed, and it was just such a awesome fucking vibe. And my amp broke midway through. It like just stopped working, and then I remember the guitar player from Choke comes up, is like, just use my amp, man. He just plugs it in. It's like, I'm like, fuck, I'm using Choke's amp right now. That's fucking dope. Like, and just
that's amazing.
Yeah. That one was there was something special about that show.
You can just picture another band going up and like kicking their amp and like smashing it a little bit. It's like, please don't work.
Yeah. Either that one or another one. I didn't put this show on though, but I remember playing a show with Attack in Black, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. Toronto. Yeah. Like, fucking amazing. They were so freaking good. They put on such an amazing show, and just we're in this like venue. It was like and it was like a little. It wasn't that like I mean, Attack Black. I guess it was a long time ago now. I mean, because as you get older, freaking years just. It seems like fucking like 15 years ago. Like what the hell?
Yeah.
But I remember it was like far enough out that it kind of felt like an old school Sudbury punk rock show where it was like just a packed venue, and it just the vibes were just so amazing. And then getting to play with this band that was like one of my favorite bands at the time. It's just really fun, cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And do you feel pressure when you play for a band that like you admire? Like, do you consider it a privilege, or do you consider it like a responsibility, or
like what do you mean? Like
there have been times when I've played on stages with people where I know the person following me is gonna blow me out of the fucking water, and the only thing I can equate it to is when I hear people like stand-up comics talking about like, you know, opening for someone who they know is just going to, you know, murder. There's this like, do I do my best material, or do I just dial back because they're going to carry it, or like, you know what I mean? I always feel like I have to set a good example, but I feel a little pressure.
For me, it's like, yeah, there's a bit of that pressure. I don't know. It's just because of like, the fact that like I used to put on all these shows and play all these shows. So like I kind of grew up playing with bands that I kind of idolized. Like I got used to doing that. And it's just a weird privilege. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that's not everyone gets to do that. Like that's actually pretty fucking cool. And that's one of the benefits from being in that smaller town where it's like, you know, there's only a handful of bands that could play with, you know what I mean? I find I just tend to just want to just always like, just do my thing, right? Just go up there and just do the best thing I could do. Because like, you know what the coolest thing is for an audience member is when you get to watch, you go there to watch one band and you see another band, you're like, that band was fucking cool too. Yeah. Like that's for me being an audience member, when I go to a show and I see something I've never heard of before and I get to like, oh shit, that was amazing. And like sometimes I'll talk about that band more than the band I want to see, because it's like, you know, you discovered something new. And so if anything,
I used to get mad at my friends back in the day. Like if they were like, oh yeah, well, you know, the band we're going to see, it comes on at 9. I'm like, no. We're seeing the openers, man. Like we don't know if these guys are going to be headlining next year. They may be fucking amazing. We got to find out.
You know, I have actually a story about that. So I played this random show. It was at like Laurentian University. It was like some frosh thing, but it was a complete bust. It was like, there was like 20 people there. Like this band called 2 Hours Traffic played, and we played afterwards. And then within 3-4 months, like they have just released an album, and what's his name, Joel Plaskett or whatever produced it. And no one knew who they were when they came here. They were going like all the way out west, all the way back kind of thing. And then they played the Townhouse on the way back. By the time they got back to Sudbury, they had blown up. They had sold out the venue. Like people were like angry that they couldn't get tickets. Like it was like,
wow.
And it was like, it was insane. It was freaking insane. Like you're absolutely right. You don't know. It's like we're just some like random band playing some shitty show like that was opening for us, and then all of a sudden we opened for them, and they just sold out the entire freaking venue, and it was like fucking crazy.
That's cool.
Amazing.
I like being there in the moment. Must have been wild too.
Yeah. It's just a crazy thing to see, like it happened that fast. But I mean, like as they were touring, the release started doing the circuit and started getting radio play and started getting like, they had all their ducks in a row for all that stuff, obviously.
Right.
They had a plan. So maybe it wasn't a super shock to them that it was going to get bigger, but yeah. They're a really cool kind of like pop indie rock kind of band. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, but they're a lot of fun.
Very cool. So like, you know, you just mentioned having a plan. So I was wondering if you could give like for the local musician that's trying to do more than just open for another band, like what suggestions would you make for ground floor shit that they can do to like start getting more venue recognition and start building a network?
Yeah. So I think it's just relationships, man. And like that's like, you know, and things might work differently in a city like Toronto's versus like a smaller city too, right? Because, you know, obviously I haven't figured it out here yet, but I feel like the same sort of things apply. It's like it's building a network. Got to meet all the other cool bands that are doing cool stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Just be friends with people and show up to other people's shows and just start making yourself known. Start going to the venues all the time, and then you'll end up figuring out, okay, this promoter does this kind of stuff, this promoter does this kind of stuff. You know, start talking to those people and ask them if you could help them with anything. Like, there's all kinds of little things you could do, and I feel like that's the way to do it, man. And it's like, I think especially in a big city like Toronto, and like we kind of talked about this too, like the first time we met, about like you need to like build a community. That's what it is. You need to build a community. If the community is not there, or if you feel like it's not there, then be the one to start building it. Just start making those connections. That's my theory anyway. So
that's what we're trying to do with this podcast too. We're trying to build something around it, and we'd love to have people showing up in the comments every week that we can share and BS with people that are watching just as much as the people that we're talking to. That's the dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've always felt like you know, when I go to a punk show in particular, and that genre specifically, if there isn't you know, you got to have at least 10 to 12 people to make it an actual punk show other than the band, because there's got to be some energy there. And if it's just two people banging their heads, that's okay for a bit, but it feels like it feels like it's not fully realized until there's a bunch of people throwing elbows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a critical mass. Maybe you can speak to this. I don't know, because you kind of started in a scene. I didn't really have that opportunity. I was kind of like fits and starts at various stages, and as you've seen, Toronto has a pretty fragmented music scene at the moment.
Yeah.
Like relative to other small towns that you know, the experience I've had in small towns. So, you know, is there like a critical mass that just suddenly there's an explosion, or does it start with existing communities coming together for music, or does it start with the music? Like, how do you think it develops?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because like, again, I was super lucky to be like get into a scene that already existed, right? So like, I cannot take by any means credit for building that. So like, I think like when it's something like fragmented, like in Toronto, I think it's just about like just building the community. You got to build it. You got to build like a way for people to know about things. You got to make people excited about it. And like, you know, I think the biggest problem with the city, like a bigger city like this, is that there's just so much to do here. There's so many options. So it's like I don't know if I want to do that, or like, you know, I'll go see you next time or whatever. So, you know, I don't, you know, I'm not entirely sure how to fix that, but like, I feel like just things like what you guys are doing here with this podcast, it's amazing. It's a really cool thing. And I think like there needs to be more things like this. And like, you know, maybe there's back in the day, I remember creating a website and actually started off on, do you guys remember Merc?
No.
IRC. It was before ICQ. It was like a chat.
Oh, I remember MIRC.
Yeah. So I remember
I did a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons on MIRC for a bit.
So I was at a buddy's place, and he showed me this thing. He's like, oh, we should make a punk a channel for the Sudbury scene. And I'm just like, yeah, we should just call it Punk Sud. I was completely joking. He's like, that's wicked, and he did that, and then that whole name became a thing for years, and like someone ended up building a whole website. It was called punksud. It was punksud.com. It was a forum. People would be like, check out my music. Oh, I'm looking for band members. Like, oh, check out these shows. It used to be like kind of a website that you could just go, you can see a calendar. These are all the shows coming up, and like it just kind of took on a life of its own. And I feel like something like that. And I don't know if Toronto has something like that right now, like an actual like place you could just go and find out everything, like what are local bands doing right now.
Yeah, I think the challenge with Toronto in particular is that there's a bunch of people trying to do that all at once, and they're actually trying to compete with each other instead of collaborate. It feels like everybody wants to be top dog, and I feel like they don't understand how dogs work. You know what I mean?
Is it for like ad revenue and stuff, or is it because they really want to be like big on the scene? Or
kind of the downside of Toronto is that we have a reputation for having a killer music scene. But unfortunately, there's been a disconnection that's happened in the past couple of years between the venues and the music creators. And now it's sort of like there's kind of constant trolls guarding all the bridges, and similar to the gatekeeping that Jason was talking about at the beginning, it's kind of evolved so that rather than having that for publication, now you have that to get on a stage, and it's kind of shifted the responsibility of like who's supposed to do what. So bands kind of have to do everything, and it becomes a challenge to like keep all those balls in the air because most of the bands don't feel like there's a community to support them. And I think they're misguided in that. I think, as you said, Jason, like if you go to the shows and you meet the bands and you get to know the sound people and the bartenders, like, and like make yourself known, there is a way to build the community. I think everybody's expecting the community to already exist, and they're not really.
I mean, like, could you imagine, like, you know how many bands there are in Toronto right now? Could you imagine if, like, there's a punk rock show and, like, one person from every punk rock band tried to show up to that show?
That's a full house.
How crazy the scene would be if that was happening.
Yeah, you do that 3 days a week, and you've got a scene.
Exactly. Like you know, like you do that, like if you go to one show a week and everyone goes to one show a week or whatever, and then like, you know, it's just you just have to show up, and then you could create it. It's like actually pretty simple to do, but it's just how do we get people to do that? That's
right.
Fun. Yeah, you can't force people to do it. You can't.
I think too, like we had a lot of that in Chicago, like in the late '90s, early 2000s, but then everybody got older. And so it's harder because you got families and all that.
100%, yeah.
So,
yeah, and I totally get that. Like, you know, I was there at one point too. You know, like I used to be married or whatever, and I've got a daughter, but like, you know, it's co-parenting, so I get like time for myself too, which is it's kind of nice. But
can relate.
yeah. But I totally empathize with people that, like, you know, they don't always have time to go, but even like if you find like once a month to go check out your local punk rock show, if everyone did that, like,
yeah. I also feel like maybe you know, my experience of various people, particularly venue owners, is that they have in Toronto, I'm talking about, they have a feeling like there's money owed to them, and I don't feel like a scene can actually develop with that sort of mentality at the outset. It's like if you don't have the creative work happening, then you don't have the resources, and the only way the creative work happens is if you have a place where people gather and they work on it together, and you have to let bands suck on stage. This is something we talked about last week. It's like you got to have shitty bands that suck turn into good bands.
Yeah.
You got to give them a place to suck.
And then
no one wants to do that in
ways,
Toronto.
There's ways to do that, man. There's ways to do that. You can have like a Wednesday night showcase kind of thing, up and coming bands, something like that. And yeah. So that's definitely it's definitely possible, man. I think it's possible. But yeah, I do know what you're saying. It's like, you know, the venues sometimes, and I've played enough shows in Toronto to know exactly what we're talking about, where it's like everyone's expected to bring a certain amount of people, and like you have to go and promote the show. The venue's not really doing the promotion for you, and unless it's like there's a couple exceptions, like there's places like like the Horseshoe seems like it's like there's an automatic audience there, just people go to the Horseshoe. Like, let's go to the Horseshoe. It's just their local place to go. If there happens to be something cool playing, they'll go check it out. Like, but not most venues aren't like that. That's something I've heard that most actually aren't. So it's so it's you know, I don't know how exactly to do that, but there's got to be a way to just, especially with active bands, when you're an active band and you're trying to do something, I think the best thing to do for not only yourself but like the scene and other bands, everything, is just go to as many shows as you can. You go to as many shows as you can, and guess what? What's going to happen is like, you know, bands pay attention to that stuff. If you guy keeps showing up to your shows, like they're probably going to come to your shows after, and then that's how it starts.
Yeah.
You know?
I also think that like, especially for younger bands, I know I had this experience when I was younger, was like, I was expecting other people to set up shows. And it was about a year in that I realized, like, if you're going to do this, you got to fucking do it. So I set up a show and it actually went great. And I like, my lesson was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I was able to pull this off. So like, what are we waiting for? Let's just do this shit, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that may be the lesson for Toronto musicians that are struggling to find a stage is like, get some friends, get 2 or 3 bands together that you know will play a show together, and then just start reaching out to venues and just like, don't ask, tell. You know, just be like, I am available. We can do Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, you know, and like give them some parameters.
If you take Jason's advice, then you know the people that you need to be reaching out to at those venues.
Bingo.
It's a nice solution there.
Yeah, bingo. All right. I think we solved all the music problems in Toronto. So
we got to wrap it up.
You're welcome, Toronto.
We'll see you at the next show.
Jason, thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Yeah, of course.
You have anything you want to plug or any?
Nah, it was just a good conversation.
Nice. Well, thanks, man.
Jason does run Rebel Force Marketing, so if you want to run through some of your things you do, anything?
It's a branding agency, web design, development, that kind of thing. You know, that's pretty much it. It's kind of you know. I like ending it out more on just like talking about the scene and doing that kind of stuff. I like that.
Cool, man.
I'm always terrible at plugging my own stuff, so
that's why I tried to force you, but it's okay. Cool. I'm gonna plug one thing that's coming up next weekend. Our sponsor, Stupid Rad Merch, has a show their 6th anniversary Saturday, February 11th, at the very famous X-Ray Arcade in Milwaukee. And I will be there with some Muckpout comics and some cards representing Muckpout at a pop-up shop before the show. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. That's going to be a hell of a show.
Yeah, it is.
And my band Mute Sounds is playing the legendary Horseshoe. This was not planned on February 9th, next Thursday. So if you're not from Toronto, suck it. It's going to be a great show. If you are from Toronto, you should definitely come out. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ben. It's always a pleasure.
Always.
All right. Hey, you made it through an entire episode. Good for you. If you're looking for more, give the rest of the channel a look, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We'll catch you fuckers next time. Later.